Hello, you're watching Tell It Like It Is, and my name is Kathy Benuck. Today's show is called Final Race for County Attorney, and it features the Democratic nominee for the seat, Attorney Patty LaFrance. Now, for the past 11 years, actually since 2001, Patty has served as a felony prosecutor with the Hillsborough County Attorney's Office and literally has prosecuted thousands of felonies, including those individuals accused of things like child abuse, child molestation, serial rapes, and domestic violence abuses. She also served for 18 months as the first assistant county attorney, responsible for the operations of the Nashua branch of the county attorney's office. As you know, there's also a Manchester branch. Throughout her career, Patty's been a tireless advocate for children, particularly those unfortunate enough to be victims themselves, and to those who really are in dire need of people to protect them. I'm not going to use up all our precious time today to go back and give you all her biography and accomplishments here again. But what I'll ask you to do is to view a previous show that we did together that is available on the BCTV website at www.bedfordtv.com. Just click on the Channel 16 daily schedule. In the little search box on the upper left on the new page, type in Tell It Like It Is, and then just look for the show titled Race for County Attorney with guest Patty LaFrance. And I think you should watch it, and you'll hear an awful lot about her background and her ideas. So with no further ado, Patty, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming.
Good to be back.
I know that you have a backbreaker of a schedule between everything, so I'm so glad you were able to fit it in.
Oh, thanks for having me again.
And
it's good to
here
see you.
You are, a month away.
Yeah,
Not
a month
even
away.
to the election, my
Yes,
gosh.
yes, coming down to the wire.
It is indeed. Yeah, you look great.
Thank you. So do you.
You're thriving in it.
Yeah, I've been busy, but with an end in sight, I think it makes it easier. It's going to end one way or the other. So
yes, yeah, I think everybody breathes a sigh of relief at the end. The
Right.
candidates, yeah.
Right.
Well, now, Patty, you obviously have very strong ideas about what the office of county attorney is
Yes.
and what it should be. You wouldn't be running for the office of county attorney if you shared all of the philosophies of the incumbent.
Right.
So, tell us what the philosophical differences are between you and the incumbent.
Well, my view is, as the county attorney, you're the top prosecutor in the county, and that means really that you are the top advocate for victims of crime in the county, those victims of felony crimes, more serious crimes, obviously. So you really should have a background as a felony prosecutor. My opponent feels differently. He has said on the record that he was interested in county attorney because it combined politics and the law. No mention of advocating for victims of crime. And he sees it as an administrative position. I just don't share that philosophy. Even though our county attorney's office is the largest in the state, it's still, relatively speaking, a small office. And really everybody has to pull their weight. And that includes the county attorney. So that's, I think, the main philosophical difference between us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, you obviously have a lot of experience, 11 years or more, really, actually, as a prosecutor with the Hillsborough County. Thus, you have a lot of ideas as to what you'd like to change.
Right.
All right. Tell us what your goals are if you get elected.
Well, I think, my goals are really to continue doing what I've been doing as an assistant county attorney. I've been conducting trainings with the police departments. I actually have 2 scheduled this week. And
On top of campaigning?
Right. And prosecuting.
You're like the ever-ready bunny.
And so that's, one of the goals, I hope, as county attorney, to continue in that respect, conducting probably even more trainings, hopefully, to get the word out. I've also conducted outreach and education as part of the Granite State Children's Alliance as on my duties as the vice president of the board of directors, to get out there and not only conduct awareness of the program, but also to educate the public, and hopefully, the ultimate goal is to prevent crime. So if I can get out there and educate parents about how to protect their children online or talk to them about body safety, as the county attorney, I think that's important to get that word out there and to get out there and educate the public to prevent crime.
I'd actually like to have you back just on that topic.
Oh, sure. I would love to.
After the rigors of the campaign.
I would love to.
Yeah, because that's important stuff.
Yeah. And the Granite State Children's Alliance has other people who actually work in the field themselves, and they have such expertise in that field. I, as a prosecutor, of course, but just as advocates for children and helping them deal with child abuse, not just the prosecution side, but also the after effects, how to get counseling and how to help a child who has been, unfortunately, the victim of child abuse.
And I know
but I would love to do that.
deeply involved in that.
I have been, and it truly is my passion.
Yeah, you can tell that just talking to you about it. Now that I know for the past few weeks, you've been involved in, I guess we could say, a very big trial.
Yes.
Are you able to talk about it at all?
I can talk a little bit about it. I just finished an attempted murder trial. A person down
Loosely
in
defined, huh?
right. He had stabbed two teenage boys who he had asked to help him. They were doing some yard work and some housework around his house. He had accused them of stealing a laptop. And the boy, they're teenage boys, they were 16 and 17 years old at the time, and, they testified, and, they said, we didn't steal anything, and look, he had a lot of laptops in his apartment.
Really?
He had been drinking, and he all of a sudden pulled a knife and stabbed one boy in kind of the rear of his stomach towards the back, and the boy's younger brother, the 16-year-old, actually got stabbed in the arm as he was trying to protect his older brother and get him out of the house. And he was convicted of attempted murder and also first-degree assault for the wounds to the other boy.
Yeah, did you have to wait long for a jury?
I think they were out about 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty fast. So, I guess you did a good job.
Well, the boys testified, and, I think their testimony was compelling, and the defendant himself actually testified. And clearly the jury did not buy his testimony, because he claimed one of the boys had pulled a knife on him.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
So, and the physical evidence of the wounds did not match up to what the defendant testified to.
Well, hopefully he'll be off the street for a long, long time.
We hope. Yeah, the sentencing's not until December. So.
Yeah, there's always a time lag, isn't there?
Right, there is. Well, they have to conduct a PSI, which is a pre-sentencing investigation, to determine, speak to the victims, and also get a background of the defendant himself, and see, whether he has a criminal history and what other issues he may have had in his life that could be either mitigating or aggravating factors for sentencing. So that it's important, and the court needs that information in a PSI to make hopefully a good educated decision about sentencing.
Now, I don't even know if you can answer this. Is this somebody that did have a criminal background? Or can you even answer? I don't want to put you on the spot.
He had some issues, I think, with some neighbors, and some of them were, and it's obviously what I intend to bring out as part of my sentencing argument. I think the neighbors were pretty vocal about the issues that they've had with him in the past. Yes.
Incredible. I don't know how you do it every day, dealing with some of these people. I really don't.
Well, again, I think I said last time, I look to my kids, and I go home and give them an extra squeeze when I have to deal with people like the man down in Nashua.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, scary.
Yeah.
Scary stuff. Now, you have racked up a really long and impressive list of endorsements during this campaign, including those from really the largest police associations in the whole county. How do you think this speaks to your campaign and candidacy?
Well, I think it's important, as a prosecutor, prosecutors are partners with the police. So these endorsements mean a lot to me, because they tell me that the police unions are really supporting me, and they understand and they recognize the work that I've done for 11 years. And they have faith that I would be the best candidate for the county attorney. So it is important to me, because we're a partnership with the police. They can do a great job of finding a criminal, and say there was a burglary in a few houses in town. They find the person, but if the prosecutor drops the ball and we don't get a conviction, there's no accountability. So all their work was for nothing if we can't kind of pick up the ball and run with it and get a conviction and get a just result for the victims. So it truly is a partnership. So I think the endorsements say a lot about their faith in my abilities.
I would say so. Because what's more frustrating to any cop than to be out there doing their job and then see things fall apart afterwards?
Right. And then, part of the training I do with the police is communicating too. The training I'm doing on Thursday involves, I call it Superior Court Boot Camp. And it's letting officers know, the younger officers who are new, who might not have testified yet in front of a jury, letting them know what to expect when they get to a jury trial, what we expect as prosecutors. So I think that communication is key. Because you know, you could have a great case, but if your officer isn't prepared, or it's not the officer isn't prepared, you haven't prepared your officer, then again, things can fall apart pretty quickly. So it's really preparing the officer for that testimony. So that's what that training is about.
And that's a good point, because I mean, that can be pretty intimidating. You know, to be sitting there in a courtroom with all kinds of people staring at you, a judge kind of looking at you sternly, the media may be sitting there, and then that bunch of people in the jury box. And if somebody has never done it before, it would be intimidating.
And not to mention the defense attorney cross-examining you, and they're out really to either show that you're not being truthful or you have a bias. So that's more, you know, preparing them for the cross-examination is key.
You're right, because I mean, obviously if somebody came up very aggressively in your face, questioning your own validity and honesty, you know, a lot of people's reaction might be to get angry. And obviously you as a prosecutor don't want your star witness all of a sudden losing it and getting angry. I mean, that wouldn't help anything.
And you know, I always say, you know, their job, it's nothing personal for defense attorneys. It really isn't. I mean, I guess occasionally there could be a kind of little tiff between a defense attorney and a police officer, but usually, you know, they have a job to do. And I respect that. You know, they're a defense attorney. Their job is to defend their client to the best of their ability. They're required to. So, you know, I always let my witnesses know that. It's really not personal to a defense attorney. They're just trying to establish, you know, they're doing their job. So, and I tell them, you treat them the same way you treat me.
Now, I mean, even with the police, when the police have to be kind of coached is not the good word, but at least informed.
Not well,
of behavior,
not
standards.
Not coached. Actually, the main thing I tell the police officer, I mean, they have their police reports, and I say make sure, you know, you can say what's in your police report. And more importantly, what I'm usually telling them is what they can't talk about, because that could cause a mistrial. So if the police officer, you know, we've had situations where a police officer just said, you know, and it wasn't intentional. He said, "Oh yeah, I knew, you know, the defendant. I recognized him." That implies that the defendant has had police contact. And now it could be he knows him from the corner store.
So
he sees him when he picks up his...
going to be right up at that bench.
Right. So it's very important. A lot of times we'll have motions from the defense attorney. You know, we can't talk about the fact that the defendant has a criminal record, or that the defendant was doing something outside of, you know, what took place during the commission of the crime. So it's more important to let the police officers and civilian witnesses too, you know, they need to know what they can't talk about.
Well, that's what I was about to, you know, jump into next too, because I mean, obviously police officers today especially get so much training. Most of them have degrees in law enforcement, advanced degrees and everything else, plus all of the regular police standard and training that they get. And when even they need guidance really to be able to go in there and do the right job and do a good job, your challenge must be huge when you're dealing with victims or witnesses who really are terrified about walking down that aisle and sitting in the witness chair.
They are, but you know, we try to prepare them. What I always tell victims, especially victims, is, you know, this isn't going to be easy, but our job is to make it as easy as possible for you, and that might involve, you know, meeting with them a couple of times before the trial. Maybe the first time they just take a tour of the courtroom, and it's what we do with every child victim. You know, we're not just going to call them up and say, "Okay, Mom, bring in, you know, Johnny the next day." We meet with them. You know, I've had victims doing cartwheels in the courtroom. I shouldn't say that. I hope I don't get in trouble, but you know, just to get them familiar with it and comfortable with it, so it's not such a scary place for them, and that's important. And then I always tell them exactly where I'm going to be standing, and more importantly, where the defendant will be standing, so or sitting, I should say, so they know it's not hopefully as scary for them to come in and testify. And you know, hopefully I've prepped them enough to just, I mean, my job is to let them tell the jury what happened to them, and I explain that to them. I always tell them, we're just having a conversation. Pretend I'm, you know, your friend or something, and you're telling me about this awful thing that happened to you. I'll, you know, don't pay attention to the jury. Sometimes I might ask you to tell the jury something, and I'll wait till the child or the the person warms up on the stand.
Sure.
And then if they feel comfortable, they can tell the jury.
Kind of lead them into it a little
Right,
bit.
right.
And I mean, even for an adult, I mean, certain types of crimes. I mean, any woman, for example, who would have to go in and testify about a rape or an assault or whatever. I mean, that can be very embarrassing.
Oh,
I mean, just
yeah.
the details that obviously in the course of things are going to be
Yes.
asked are cringeworthy when you're watching it. Never mind for the person sitting there being expected to kind of put out all that in front of a room full of people.
And, you know, sadly, you know, most, especially adult rapes too, and child sexual assaults are not committed by strangers. It's somebody the person knows, you know. And I think it's even more difficult because they're put, you know, they're kind of put through the ringer by defense counsel. And again, you know, it's their job, but it, you know,
but it's brutal.
calling into question, well, why did you do that, or how much did you drink that night? So it's very difficult. And like I said, we try to prep them as much as possible, you know, to let them know what's going to happen.
Now, you know, you have done this obviously over and over and over again,
Right.
and it's probably like second nature to you. And as part of the job of being county attorney, obviously you're going to be giving a lot of guidance and counsel to the new people coming in, the younger attorneys and such. So with that, probably not doing a good job of asking the question, how can somebody who has never done that, who has never worked, you know, in a prosecutor's office or whatever, how can they bring that same level to the job as county attorney, as somebody like yourself who is totally adept at it and can provide those type of services, not only to the public, but to the people working for you?
Right. Well, I don't think they can. I mean, if you think about it, and I say this to police officers or doctors, you know, could you imagine if you were a doctor, say, you know, you're a surgeon for 10 years, and all of a sudden a first-year medical student comes in and now is chief of surgery. Certainly that person can't guide you in surgery, or a police officer. You know, if a mall security officer became your chief of police and you're to look to them for guidance, it's not feasible. It doesn't
No matter how
work
well
like that.
intentioned.
Right.
They just don't have the background or the knowledge.
Right, exactly.
Wow. So I mean, you think that carries over across the board to everything?
To everything, you mean?
Everything of the duty of the job?
For the county attorney, yes. Yes, because, you know, part of the job of county attorney is also to advocate for the office and advocate for funding and budgets, and to really, I mean, fight for your budget in front of the legislature, and especially a legislature, you know, and, you know, not blaming them, but looking to cut budgets where they can, and I understand that. However, I think as long as you can explain why you need a budget and why you need funding in a particular area, then once they see the logic of that, and you're not just at, you know, our offices are pretty sparse. We're not sitting in the lap of luxury, certainly in our offices. We're down to the bare bones. And once you can advocate, I think, effectively, then the legislature won't cut your budget if you can justify. And I say that because I know that for a fact. When I spoke in front of the Judiciary Committee to keep the courthouse in Nashua open, you know, from what we were hearing from people in Nashua, that was a done deal. They were going to close that courthouse to save money.
I remember reading about it in the newspapers.
Right, that was from what we heard from court personnel. It was a done deal. They were told they were moving, and there was nothing that could be done about it. Well, thank goodness, you know, there were a group of people in Nashua who organized, and I was one of the people who testified. I was the only one from my office to testify. The county attorney didn't.
Really?
I was able to, and I'm not saying I did it entirely myself. There were so many people involved in that. But I was able to make them see the human side of a budget cut. I went in with numbers. First of all, I ran some numbers as to how much it would cost our office in additional spending if we were, you know, moved up to Manchester, but also the impact it would have on victims of crime, particularly those obviously in Nashua. And it's something that maybe some of the legislature didn't think about, where, you know, we were paying, you know, when the Superior Court moved down to Nashua for 18 months while the new Superior Courthouse was being built, you know, we spent extra money to bring victims from Manchester to Nashua who did not even have the money to travel. I mean, people don't think about that.
No, they don't.
So that brings a human side to that budget cut. So I believe that if you can do that, if you can passionately advocate for that, then maybe, you know, the legislature won't be so intent on cutting, cut, if they see, all right, there's a reason that we need this expenditure. And you know, a lot of people came up and told me, some of the legislators themselves came up and said I did a great job, I was very passionate, and I was very knowledgeable about what happened in the office. And like I said, I'm certainly not going to take all the credit myself, but you know, it was a unanimous vote to kill that bill.
Unanimous?
Yes, in the Judiciary Committee. Well, like I said, there were a number of people who testified, but I did, you know, a lot of people came up to me and said I had done a good job of I think, putting a face on budget cuts.
Now, just the practicality aspect of the whole thing, too. If everything was jammed into just that one building in Manchester,
right.
I mean, the courtrooms are full all the time. The staff is busy all the time.
Right.
Wouldn't that have, like, incredibly delayed trials and everything else?
Well, I mean,
try to jam everybody into one building. I mean,
yeah, and I mean, not to mention the parking.
Oh, that's another story.
Yeah, and you know, and I say, when I testified, I didn't do it for myself. You know, quite frankly, the building in Manchester is gorgeous, and there's security in there. You know, we're in a secure building in Manchester. You know, it wouldn't have bothered me to work out of that office. I didn't do it for myself. I did it because there were victims in Nashua who would have been extremely put out, or I can't think of the word, but they disadvantaged. I'm sorry, I can think of it now. Disadvantaged by the court moving up here. That's why I did it. And again, you know, that's part of the reason why I'm running for county attorney. I am a true advocate for victims of crime, and you know, I don't do it for myself. I don't do it for the pay. I do it because I truly believe that victims of crime need a voice.
Oh yeah, because I mean, obviously, if you were in private practice,
right,
you would certainly be earning more than you would as a public employee. There's no question about that. There's no question.
Right.
We all know that, I think.
Yeah.
Kind of on the same line. Now, you as county attorney, I mean, there would be some turnover, obviously, with staff as people maybe decide to go into private practice rather than make a career of the county attorney's office.
Right.
So wouldn't a lot of your job also be mentoring these folks and
really, I mean, mentoring
the new staff coming in as prosecutors?
Yeah, and you know, lead by example. You know, I've said I wouldn't ask anybody to do anything I'm not willing to do myself, and that might include staying late and answering phones, or you know, I'm kind of a hands-on person, and I'm certainly not ready to give up prosecuting yet. Even if, you know, knock on wood, I do win the election. I still intend on keeping a caseload. Obviously not, you know, the heavy caseload that I have now. But
well, no, because you have administrative duties as well. Yeah.
And you know, that's another thing that differentiates me from my opponent. You know, he has said, oh, he doesn't really carry a caseload because another county attorney told him he couldn't, and you know, you just can't do it. It's an administrative position in an office as big as ours. And you know, it's funny that he would say that because, you know, Marguerite Wagling carried a caseload. Her and I prosecuted a rape case together.
Is that right?
So yes. So you know, she didn't have a big caseload, but some of the major ones she took, and it's just. Yeah,
I remember seeing her name all the time. I didn't know the woman, but I used to read it in the paper all the time.
Right, and it just, I think again, it shows that. You know, Marguerite was a wonderful, wonderful county attorney. She was a Republican, but it didn't matter to me, and it doesn't. Political party doesn't matter in this position.
And she's a judge now.
Right, she is. Yeah. She's a judge. Yeah. So, you know, she was, like I said, in the trenches with us, right alongside us, and not, you know, just in an administrative position.
And I can see where it would be difficult if somebody has never worked as a prosecutor themselves.
Right.
Mentoring a staff that is made up of prosecutors.
Yes.
I mean, you're not there defending the folks that are walking through that door.
Right, right.
Certainly not. Well, we're kind of getting down into the end run here, time zone-wise. Any subjects in particular that, you know, we haven't covered that you feel the voters should know about? You know, and it can be anything. I mean, a part of the office, a part of what changes you might make.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I've pretty much touched on all of them. There's a lot of maybe little changes. One thing, you know, I started a few years ago, and it kind of got dropped because of we went into the 2008 crash, if you will. But I really wanted to put technology in the courtroom, the basic things. So every time we have a trial, for instance, I have to drag in a screen. I have to bring in my laptop.
Really?
Yeah.
The courtrooms not equipped with any of those things?
No, not equipped with modern technology.
Oh, wow.
It was a project I started, and it just kind of got left by the wayside because, everybody, their budgets just got cut. And that's one thing I'd really like to start doing. And it would save, it would save money for even civil litigants, because their attorneys don't have to bring in all their equipment. So, and it would make trials run faster, I think, too, in terms of, sometimes when you don't have the equipment yourself, you're doing everything manually, showing a document to a doctor and then giving it to the jury instead of putting it right up there on the screen so everybody can see it at once. So it just, things like that, I think it would make the courts run a little bit smoother, trials
and with the clerks as well, right? Because, I mean, every so often doesn't proceedings have to kind of stop while the clerk may go looking for a record or whatever that the judge needs, or that kind of thing? Well,
not so much. I mean, if we're missing something, I think we'll just kind of take a recess, I guess. Yeah, I guess you could say sometimes it
all the smokers will run outside.
Right. That's right.
Well, we are really coming into the end now, so what I'd like you to do, Patty, is tell those voters out there the election's only a couple of weeks away, why they need to put their vote.
Okay.
Their check mark, their smudge, or whatever system they have in their town beside your name.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't about political party. Never once has a victim ever asked me what political party I belong to, and I've never asked a victim. What's important is that the county attorney should be a person who believes that the county attorney is the top prosecutor in the county and not an administrator. I have been a prosecutor, a felony prosecutor, for 11 years, and I have advocated for hundreds and hundreds of victims, and I've put away some pretty dangerous individuals. So when you're going to the ballot box, ask yourself, if you, God forbid, wherever the victim of a violent crime or a member of your family were, would you want an administrator overseeing the prosecution of the case, or a felony prosecutor? The top prosecutor in the county should be an actual experienced prosecutor. Thank you. And please vote for me, Patricia LaFrance, for Hillsborough County Attorney. Thank you.
Well, you can tell you're used to standing in front of judges and juries and getting to the point. Good job.
Thank you.
Good job. Well, you've run a very good campaign. A lot of folks who did not know Patty LaFrance a few months ago now know who she is.
I hope so.
Oh, I think so. I see signs everywhere and everything else. So you've
good.
Obviously steadily built support through the
good.
weeks and months. Yeah.
And I hope people are educating themselves about the position too.
I think
that's important.
Yeah, and I think you've helped to make that happen.
I hope so.
Just explaining, your own daily existence there.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming. Best of luck in the home stretch.
Thank you, Kathy.
And definitely would like to have you back to talk about some of those issues too.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to.
Again, have a great election day. We'll all be waiting eagerly for the results the next morning.
Thank you, Kathy. Maybe I'll see you in Bedford again.
I did run into primary day at the polls.
Yep.
That's right. You were out there all day.
I was.
All right. Again, thanks.
Thank
Best
you.
of luck. Well, here we are at the end of yet another show. You've met Patty LaFrance, county attorney candidate, and she wants your vote. So I hope that you listened well and will look at her old tape. And she tells it like it is. That's what this show is about. Until the next time, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.